Hi everyone, Rudy here. Today I want to talk about legendary gems and everything you need to know about which ones are the best, which ones to use generally, which you want to level first, and some have like some small particular uses and so on. So basically everything you need to know, and we can start. I have them here in my inventory right now. They're all like loosely sorted by the maximum level you want to go to with those. So on the right, we have like the gems you go to the maximum you can. Then we have those that are capped at 99 or 100. We have the capped at 50, Boot of the Hoarder. Theoretically, Iceblink is also capped at 50, but you don't level it further than 25, which also applies to most of these other gems here generally. And then we have the useless ones. So we can actually start with the Gem of Ease here on the left. I get a lot of questions about this. Why are we not using this in Greater Rifts or on support or something? And the answer is it's pretty damn useless. So you get, I don't know, a couple thousand XP bonus or so per kill, and it doesn't scale with Greater Rift here. So you do get like millions and billions of XP per monster in the higher tiers. So Gem of Ease is kind of like, yeah, it's just there to help you level a little bit for your 1 to 70 journey when you level your own characters or when you get boosted, and that's about it. One trick about this one is you can use a 25 Gem of Ease with any item in the cube, and it will consume the 25 Gem of Ease and make the item require level 1. So if you want, you can build your entire gear set for level 1 with high level items, but that's about it. We have Myrine. This one is absolutely useless. You should never level this unless you want to use it for augments. Moratorium is actually relatively nice. So when you have need for a defensive gem and you don't have any of them leveled yet, Moratorium is actually not terrible to use as a defensive option at level 0. You should never level this one unless you want to augment, but generally it's not really used in any build. It's pretty terrible, but at rank 0, when all the other gems are also 0, it's pretty good. You have Iceblink. Iceblink is a very nice support gem. In every form and composition there needs to be one guy who has Iceblink and uses some code skill. You don't have to level it further than 25. In fact, you usually want to avoid that to prevent monsters from being slowed too much, but it doesn't really matter too much. So this is like a support gem here. The same goes for Toxin. Toxin is also a gem that you only use for the 25 effect because of the 10% additive damage bonus, and this one stacks. So compared to Iceblink, you can have multiple of those, and every support needs to have one of them. We have Wrath of Lightning. This one is also, it's usually for speed builds. It's also used for a 25 effect where you get 25% movement speed. So on support Barbarian, for example, this is a very common gem, or in certain T16 builds, if you don't need the damage at all, in bounty builds, this can be a nice choice here. You don't care about the damage it does, it's absolutely nothing. Bane of the Powerful, kind of the same thing here. You can level it higher, but typically it's only used for speed farming builds, and at 25 you get the bonus of elite damage, which is nice, and you have 55 seconds duration on the gem already. I usually never level it further than 25. There's very, very few Greater Earth builds that run Bane of the Powerful on a higher tier, and it's typically a rather weak DPS gem. So you only use this as kind of like a third option or so for like a T16 build, and that's it. Pain Enhancer, basically the same story as all the other like proc gems. The damage is extremely weak. We used to use this back in the T6 times. There it was alright, and these days you can also make it do a little bit of damage on T16, but it's, you know, like in a world where you want to one-shot everything in T16, this is simply not enough. So you only use this for the attack speed bonus. And this one is actually very strong. There are certain builds that benefit a lot from attack speed. When you have especially group compositions where the bar pulls like 100 monsters, you get tons of attack speed, essentially capping out very easily with just this gem. So for example, for the Witch Doctor, with Spirit Barrage, this is like the best DPS gem actually in group, and it buffs your damage by like, I don't know, 200% or so in some pulls. So pretty strong because of the attack speed effect. Gogok of Swiftness. It's also mainly used for the cooldown reduction, but it also gives you some attack speed and dodge, which is quite nice. And yeah, this you can level it higher. So typically 25 is fine, but especially when you use your support on higher tiers, you want to level it further up for the dodge chance. So that's quite nice. And otherwise 25 is usually okay. Boon of the Hoarder. So this one is an absolutely mandatory in every T16 build if you want to consider that build good. And you should level it to 50. You get a 100% chance to get a gold explosion when you kill something. You get movement speed. It's all really nice for a speed farming build. And you need the gold income to farm augments, to empower your greater rifts and so on. So typically you combine this with the Everrise band, and every T16 build should have that. There's also the gem that I level to maximum first almost every season. You get this one from puzzle rings. So the first time you find a puzzle ring, just open it, kill the boss, and you get Boon of the Hoarder there. And then I level it as fast as possible, typically at the start of the season. Here we have Legacy of Dreams. This is a very important gem for any build that doesn't use sets. So typically this is also I think the second gem that drops after Bane of the Powerful. So there's like a set order of Bane of the Powerful first, and then Legacy of Dreams second at the start of the season. And then the other gems are randomized. But this one is extremely important, and you need to level it as fast as possible when you run an LLD build. So the damage bonus goes up really fast towards the start, and then it slows down a little bit, so you don't necessarily have to max it out right away. But if you get it to like 40, 50, 60 right away in your first few GRs when you start a season, this will already give you a big boost because you can equip any random legendary items, and your damage just skyrockets really fast. So you get up and running to like GR 50, 60, 80, 100 really quick on the start of the season, depending on the build, of course. But if you have a non-set build, this is definitely the most important gem. Esoteric Alteration is the primary choice for a defensive gem. It's very, very strong, especially when you max it out at 100. And you can definitely include this in many speed farming builds, even pushing builds. This is like the prime choice when your character is too squishy. You go with Esoteric Alteration. It essentially saves you from all the dangerous elite affixes. It saves you from ghost. It saves you from a lot of like lightning effects and fire, blazing guardian, ground effects, and all this stuff. And this really helps you out to survive, especially early on when you're super squishy with like Paragon 600, and you have your whole build completed, and you try GR 110 or something, you're gonna get wrecked. And Esoteric will help you with that. And typically, swapping out a DPS gem for an Esoteric is a DPS loss of around 3 tiers. So it's not even that big, at the start where you're not really pushing, you're just trying to progress. So losing a bit of damage there is not really a big deal, and you can gain a lot of toughness from just this one gem. Mutilation Guard is also a defensive gem that is used in very few builds. For example, Crusader uses this right now on season with the RA Tower version. It simply helps you to survive. It's like the second best defensive gem. So typically not really used a lot, but it has some potential here and there. Now for the last gems. So these are typically the main gems used in certain builds, and they go to 150. So it depends a little bit on your build. The prime choice usually is Bane of the Trapped. That is almost in every single build, in Greater Rifts especially, because of the 60% damage bonus. The aura procs the damage bonus itself, so everything that is around you will be slowed already. And then sometimes you can use some stuff like Thunder Fury on the follower. You can have some passives like Thrill of the Hunt, or you even use cold skills that slow anyway, and that will usually apply the damage bonus for you. Bane of the Stricken is also the next most important gem, especially for solo pushing. Essentially, every single solo pushing build uses this one, because this is the only way to kill Rift Guardians on higher tiers. So without Bane of the Stricken, a 5-minute Rift Guardian fight, for example, on higher tiers would take like 30 minutes or so, maybe less, maybe more, depending on the build. But yeah, you need Bane of the Stricken in almost every single build, and the damage bonus stacks up really fast. What you need to know about this one is it only stacks on one target at a time. It stacks on the first target hit, so when you have AoE abilities, it's very hard to stack it on the Rift Guardian, and typically it does almost nothing in the Rift. So sometimes when you have like a single elite left, and maybe you can stack up for like 10 seconds, get a little bonus and finish off the elite. But generally it's only for the Rift Guardian, and you have to be really careful about what you're hitting, especially on ad bosses. So when you have something like Choker, typically those fight takes really long, because it spawns ads over ads, and you do not get the string stacks. So you lose a lot of damage potential on the boss, and you want to try to avoid that. So, for example, what I do sometimes is when I have something like Stone Singer that spawns these little fissures on a Demon Hunter, for example, I don't activate Vengeance for like the first minute of the fight, so that I can just multi-shot or evasive fire the boss without the random rockets from Vengeance going towards the ads. So these are like some little tricks you can use to make Bane of the Stricken a little more potent, and it also makes it so that you do most of the damage towards the end of the fight. So when you have a power pile for the boss, for example, use it later. Then we have Zay's Stone of Vengeance. This one is extremely good for any range build. And a fun fact about this one is that you get the first bonus already at 0 yards, and you get the maximum bonus at 40 yards. So the tooltip is straight up wrong here. And this is also the reason why you see this gem used in melee builds sometimes, because you always get the first bonus, and in some cases also the second bonus. So this already makes it usually on par or better than Bane of the Powerful, which I mentioned earlier. Bane of the Powerful is extremely weak when you don't have the effect permanently, and even if you do, it's also pretty shit. So yeah, you have Zay Stone for that to help out with builds that don't really have another option. So you have Zay Stone of Vengeance for those builds to just help out a little bit with DPS. You have Taeguk. Taeguk is an extremely strong gem for any channeling build, but it can only be used in channeling builds. But it gives you lots of damage and armor, so it has kind of like a double effect, and it's probably even better than Bane of the Trapped in those builds. So this is basically a must-have, and it's really nice. Back in the day, Taeguk actually worked with any skill that spent resource, and it stacked to like, I don't know, 100 times or so, and then eventually it was changed to a channeling only gem. I really hope that something like this will make a return, but maybe with a different stacking mechanic where you have like a decay instead of all the stacks dropping at once. So I think this would be great to actually give some more options for legendary gems, because there's actually a few builds that don't really have legendary gem options. For example, on a multi-shot Demon Hunter, like the prime choice is Zay Stone, but if you want to do like some GR 80 or 90 speed farming without Bane of the Trapped, you don't have any gems. You have Zays, and that's it. There's no boon for Hoarder in GRs, there is no other DPS gem that works with it, and you simply cannot use anything besides Bane of the Powerful, which also sucks pretty hard. So this is kind of a problem, and I really hope that we're gonna get like, you know, another 2 or 3 legendary gems at some point, where you can fill these holes and add some more niches basically, or maybe also something that allows us to kill leads a little bit more effectively besides Bane of the Stricken. Anyway, another really good gem here is Enforcer. Enforcer is typically used in every single pet build, so whenever you have this, it's essentially the same damage buff as the Bane of the Trap, but it's unconditional as long as you use pets for your DPS, and it also has like a nice secondary effect of making them immortal essentially. Simplicity Strength is probably the strongest DPS gem, but it only works for primary skills, and it also heals you at the same time for a lot. So for example, like a Frenzy Barb benefits a lot from this gem. This is definitely the must-have here, and even better than Bane of the Trapped in those cases. Yeah, and then we have Boyarsky's Chip. There's not really a lot of Thorns builds around right now, but when there is one, for example, Thorns Crusader used this one, Thorns Necro, yeah, it's extremely strong in those builds as well, but it has a kind of like its own niche. And finally, the last gem, Molten Wildebeest, which I forgot to mention earlier. So this one can be used especially in T16 builds when you have a Squirt's Necklace, and it has huge life regeneration and gives you a shield based on your life regen, and this can be used to prevent the Squirt stacks from dropping, which is quite nice, and it's essentially a DPS boost while also giving you lots of recovery. In Greater Rifts, on a support character, maybe in 2 or 3 man, this is relatively useful, especially on a bar, for example. So you can actually survive on your own in the high GRs, or certain solo pushing builds that are extremely squishy or don't have any life recovery mechanics also use this occasionally, for example Necros. And otherwise it's not really a great gem, but it has these uses here. Yeah, so I hope this helps clear some things up. One last thing about augments. So what you want to do is when you farm for Calasan's Despair, you can just use like one of these useless gems here, for example, like Moratorium or Marionate or something, and you can get multiple copies of this by just dropping it on the ground and then running a GR. and you will always get this one missing gem essentially. So you can do this a few times, drop the new one on the ground again, run another GR, and then at the end when you have like 15 of them, just pick them all up, put them in your stash, and this is how you can level your legendary gems for Colorless Sun Spare. You don't have to do it one by one and so on. You can just level them all at the same time and then augment them at whenever you feel ready. Anyway, I hope you liked this little video here, and I'll see you guys next time.